Hello everybody, welcome back to High Ground. My name is Tanner, and today we're talking about some roster changes for Rainbow Six Siege. Specifically, we'll be focusing on North America. So this is perhaps the biggest transfer window we've ever seen. The transfer window's already closed, but we don't have every single thing announced just yet. So I'll leave out some of the stuff that is pretty heavily rumored, more or less confirmed, but not actually announced. Some of it I'll allude to. We'll mostly focus on the confirmed stuff, but some of the things we just can't really ignore. They are too big to ignore. Kicking it off with Oxygen, they actually make 3 roster changes. We have Hat, Diaz, and Newers all being dropped from the roster. So that leaves just Yaga and Gomez on the team. There were rumors of DarkZero considering Gomez. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if they just didn't end up going with him. Still on Oxygen are Yaga and Gomez. 3 changes for Oxygen. We have Forrest, Grixer, and Adam. They misspell Forrest's name here, even though his @ is correct up here. I think this is one of the more exciting teams. We've seen Forrest on, I guess, Astralis and then Spacestation for quite some time, and even just Spacestation by itself for quite a while. We finally see Callout and Forrest split up after so long. I don't know if there were any periods where they were sort of technically split up, where they weren't officially joining teams at the same time or whatever, but more or less for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, something like that. They've been together. They were originally a player duo, and at some point Callout went to coach, so it was Forrest as a player, Callout as a coach, but now finally split up. I'll be curious to see how Forrest performs on a new team. Same thing for Grixer. He was on Sonics and then Shopify for a really long time. There was a short period, I think last year or the year before, where he was on the bench, but ignoring that, he was on that team for a very long time, and for most of his career, really. He played on E United before that, but for the most part, he has been a Sonics player, and at one point, he was one of the best statistical players, not only in North America, but in the entire world. He had one SI where I think he ended up as the #1 rated player in the entire event. Might have been 2022, don't quote me on that, but I think Sonics made, top 6 in that event. So he has shown up internationally. I think he has a little bit of a reputation, maybe him and Rexon both, for sort of ghosting at certain points in events, but we'll have to see how he performs on a new team. He did look not terrible on new Sonics, but Sonics/Shopify. But with the role changes over time, it seemed like it didn't really favor him. He didn't look very remarkable, and maybe this is time. It's time for him to shine once again. And then Adam, who actually has a decent amount of Tier 1 experience at this point, played on Wildcard, played on Sonics, and most recently played on Unwanted, who just made top 4 at SI last month. He did have a really abysmal game in their very last game where they got eliminated. He went, I don't remember, 3-18 or something, truly terrible. But he did look pretty good at the event besides that. So this is a team that I'm not convinced will be one of the absolute top teams, top 2 or 3, maybe even 4. We'll have to see. I think it is possible, though, especially with how tumultuous things are, with how many roster changes there have been. Perhaps there will be a chance for this team to slide in to make a major, and I guess the major qualifying format's a little bit different. But anyways, this is a team that nonetheless I am very excited to see play. Moving on to Spacestation, yeah, we saw Forrest being dropped. Who is replacing him? It is Newers. So sort of a trade. Newers going from Oxygen to Spacestation, Forrest going from Spacestation to Oxygen. I imagine it was more so Forrest being dropped for Newers, and then Forrest became available, so Oxygen picked him up, but I don't for sure know that timing, so not entirely sure there. Anyways, this is a pretty exciting change. I think if you were going to drop anybody from SSG, it would probably be Forrest, but this does raise some role questions. We've seen teams in the past just pick up a bunch of really good fraggers and then let the roles work themselves out, and a lot of times that made, really frag heavy players play not very frag heavy roles, and thus they didn't really get the opportunity to shine. I wonder if that's going to happen here. What I imagine is going to happen is Fultz is just straight up the support player. J9O is probably the second support/flex kind of player, and then Ashen remains on first entry, with the second entry /lurk/flex sort of switching between Newers and Benja. That's sort of what I envision, at least for them on attack, and I think that makes sense. I do wonder how the shields will go as far as who's going to play shields. I guess, Blackbeard isn't the same as the traditional shields, but Forrest was the main shield player. We've seen other players on this team play some shields, but I wonder if that's going to leave a little bit of a gap in this team as long as shields are really prominent in the meta, which maybe it'll be forever, maybe it won't. Maybe CJX won't have shields. We'll have to see. But I'm excited for this change. This is now a team that I could certainly see winning an event. I could have maybe seen it before, but I do feel like this ups the ceiling of the team by at least some amount. Moving on to Shopify, and we don't have the formal announcement for who's being picked up, but Grixer was announced to be dropped. This, I mean, happened before Auction announced that they were picking him up, but we're not going chronologically. We're trying to sort of go team by team. But let's just talk about who they're picking up, because it is maybe the biggest pickup of the entire transfer window for North America, maybe even the entire world. Spoit replacing Grixer. Again, not formally announced, so I guess something could come out of left field and really shock me, shock you, but the only thing I've heard is Spoit being picked up. Transfer window's already closed, so I mean, almost certainly they're just waiting for a big announcement, unless I haven't seen it. Please, let me know in the comments if it has been announced and somehow I just did not see it. But I've been watching the feed pretty diligently, and yeah, that's a pretty crazy change. I guess roles are a little bit of a question here as well, because I wouldn't imagine Spoit playing the exact same roles they had Grixer playing, but maybe this will just work out well. So Rexen, Spoit, Canadian, Ambi, and Serve is the new team. That's a really good looking team. I think a lot of people are probably excited to see the likes of Canadian and Spoit on the same team. And we'll just have to see how it pans out, though. It's a team certainly with a ton of potential, but we said that about M80 for a very long time. Spoit was on M80 for a really long time, and they flopped at basically every international event they attended. They were pretty much always good within the region, but yeah, they were pretty much always bad internationally, culminating in this SI. And part of that was maybe the roster changes they decided to make beforehand, and part of it certainly was to do with the whole Bodega and or Vivas incident. I still don't know the exact involvement of Vivas, but anyways, the whole Bodega situation, the beef with Nafe and them getting ejected from the event, that you have to imagine that really hampered their, I guess not momentum because they lost that game, but hampered their ability in the tournament going forward. And then I think that then they just get eliminated by Cyclops immediately after that. So Spoit has had some pretty big flops internationally on M80. I guess he had some pretty good success though on Rogue/Koi, winning a major, and then they made like top 6 at SI. I guess it would have been 2023. So some good stuff, some bad stuff, and well, let's just see if it was an M80 curse or if it was maybe a Spoit curse. M80, let's talk about it. Spoit was dropped, again, not announced where he's going, but we pretty much know. Packer also being dropped from the roster. I think this is pretty unfortunate. Brought on the team, really young player, not completely inexperienced in T1, but not a ton of experience, and he had a pretty poor performance, as did the team. But again, have to imagine all of that is on the players, as we saw their support staff get into a bit of a tussle, and they were pretty good in groups. I think in hindsight, they were maybe, Group A was maybe the weakest group. I guess Unwanted went pretty far, but G2 went 0-2 in bracket. These guys went 0-2 in bracket. Liquid went 0-1 in bracket, and so not a very impressive group in the grand scheme of things. It does feel really bad, though, to get picked up for a really high profile team for the highest profile event of the game, and then to sort of have a bad performance and then get immediately kicked. But they had something else that they wanted to pursue. And what is that? They picked up Gaveni and they pick up Hot and Cold. This is extremely reminiscent of the Beast Coast team that won in Manchester last year, because, well, it's 4/5 of the players. We have Kino instead of Spirits. Is that an upgrade? Sort of up to interpretation. I think a lot of people are probably saying no, and it's unclear why they would even make that change. We'll talk about Spirits here in a minute. He goes to another team. Maybe he already had that offer. Maybe he thought maybe it was a better offer. I don't know what the exact situation is. Maybe M80 just really loves Kino, and they said you have to have Kino or else it's not happening. He's been on M80 the entire time. I guess he got benched for last SI, but he's basically been on M80 the entire time M80 has been in Siege. And yeah, this looks like a really powerful team going forward. Let's name them off: Gunner, Diffuser, Hot and Cold, Gaveni, and Kino. I'm not sure who the coach is. If you know who the coach is, let me know, because obviously it's not Vivas or Bodega anymore. Maybe I missed the announcement. Maybe it hasn't been announced, but I guess it's probably not Fett. That would be crazy. I guess he is a content creator for M80, but I can't imagine he returns to coaching. But that would be pretty monumental in a lot of people's eyes. And this team, yeah, a ton of promise. They were undoubtedly the best performing North American team last year, because they didn't qualify for Esports World Cup or the second major, but they won the first major. They were the highest placing North American team at SI. I'll be curious to see how well Kino integrates into this roster. I guess he's also a person who can play shields just like Spirits, but I think Kino, known for Montaigne more than Blitz, whereas Spirits probably thought of as one of the best Blitz players, and a lot of people, if you ask them, would probably say Kino's one of the worst Monty players in the world, but that might be just a little bit of propaganda. Anyways, let's move on. DarkZero, they drop Kobe Lax, they drop Bolo/Bolo retires, re-retires, I guess. I think he says in this video, I'm not calling it retiring because who knows what's going to happen, but how many players retire a second time to come back again? We'll have to see what happens with him, but I have to imagine he probably doesn't come back again. Anyways, they pick up Spirits. The other player has not yet been announced. It's pretty heavily rumored to be Citizen, but I've also heard there's been a little bit of friction with that, so maybe that won't end up happening or hasn't end up happening. And yeah, we're just waiting on this final announcement. As of now, I'm assuming it's Citizen, but without the formal announcement and with what I've heard, I couldn't say for certain. So yeah, why is Spirits on DarkZero rather than M80? I don't know. Does Spirits just have a bunch of beef with M80? He didn't want to go back? Or yeah, like I said, maybe they have to have Kino, or he just had a much better offer here at DarkZero. Whatever the case, this is to me one of the more exciting changes. I'm looking forward to seeing Spirits on DarkZero. And that makes DarkZero, I guess, Pamba, NJR, Nath, Spirits, and the mystery fifth, who again is rumored to be Citizen. And then finally we have Wildcard dropping Bosco, dropping Spiff. The players they're picking up haven't yet been announced. I've heard Baby Shark almost certainly, who I guess is an import. I don't really know much about him. Hasn't played T1 before. And then I've also heard for their final player, it would be Robbie. Recently played on Falcons. He was a real star player at the most recent major, and then still pretty solid at SI. So if he can keep up that performance, assuming he actually joins his team, I think that's something to look forward to. And then finally, let's talk about what we didn't talk about. So yeah, M80, we know. Spacestation, we know. Wildcard, I just talked about, I guess not officially confirmed, but we probably know. DarkZero up in the air a little bit. Cloud9 and Luminosity, I think we more or less know based on the rumors. You can look it up if you want. But still, a bunch of returning pros. I think these will be like sort of ones to watch. They'll be underdogs for sure. So we'll talk about that, I guess, maybe when they're officially announced. Oxygen, we know. They're the only one that actually shows here on Liquipedia, and then Shopify. And I guess there will be two more teams, one coming from LATAM North, one from NA Challenger, and yeah, I guess we'll just have to see how that pans out. So that is most of North America being known. There are some pretty big changes in Europe and Brazil. Maybe I'll do a video talking about those. We'll have to see. We'll see what happens. But, let me know what you think about these changes, which are the most shocking, which are the most exciting, which are the worst roster changes. And I will catch you guys next time.